I want you to imagine a farmer standing in a dry, cracked wasteland. No rain, no green, no evidence that anything could possibly grow there, right? Then God tells the farmer to plant seeds. The farmer looks around and thinks, plant seeds? Where? In this? But he obeys. Day after day, year after year, he works the ground that seems to be dead. His neighbors, they laugh. His family question his sanity. Nothing changes. The soil remains dry. The horizon remains barren. Yet every morning he walks back out and plants, waters, and waits. Now imagine those seeds being bamboo seeds. See, certain varieties of bamboo can spend years developing underground, developing a root system before anything ever appears above the surface. And to the casual observer, nothing's happening. No stalk, no leaves, no growth. But beneath the ground, an invisible foundation is spreading farther and deeper than anyone can see. Then one day, after years of apparent silence, the bamboo breaks through the surface and begins growing at an astonishing rate. See, that growth wasn't sudden. It was simply unseen. That's Jeremiah 29. See, Israel was in Babylon, and from a human perspective, it looked like nothing was happening. The temple was gone. The kingdom was gone. The promises seemed buried underneath the dirt of exile. Yet, underneath the surface, God was doing what he had always been doing. Building roots. Preparing a future. Growing something nobody could see yet. When God told them to build houses, plant gardens, marry, and raise families, he was essentially saying, keep planting seeds in Babylon. Not because Babylon was their destination, but it was because God was not finished working beneath the surface. And many of us want God to show us the bamboo before we plant the seed. And God often asks us to plant first, to obey first, to trust first, to keep watering ground that looks barren, to keep praying when nothing appears to be changing, to keep loving when our heart is tired, to keep serving when the results are invisible. Because faith isn't believing after the bamboo breaks through the ground. Faith is planting in dry soil because God said something is growing there. And one day, when the harvest comes, we'll discover that God was working beneath the surface the entire time. The people in Jeremiah 29 weren't waiting for 70 years because God was absent. They were waiting 70 years because God was growing roots deep enough to sustain what he was about to bring forth. So don't judge God's work by what you can see above the surface. Some of his greatest work is happening underground. This is also one of the most quoted and sometimes misunderstood passages in the Bible. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. See, most people use it like a promise that God is about to give you a promotion. God is about to remove your struggle. God is about to make everything work out quickly. But when you dig into this context, it becomes far more powerful. See, the context we often miss is God was speaking to the Jewish exiles in Babylon, right? They had lost their homes, their land, their temple, their freedom, and God had just told them something shocking. He told them, he said, you're going to be there for 70 years. Not 70 days, not 70 months, 70 years. In fact, most of the people hearing Jeremiah's words would die in Babylon and never see the fulfillment of the promise. And that changes everything. What God was actually saying, God wasn't promising immediate rescue. He was promising purposeful suffering. The verses right before Jeremiah 29:11 tell them, build houses, plant gardens, marry, have children, seek the welfare of Babylon. In other words, stop waiting for an immediate escape. Live faithfully where I have placed you. Now that's a message I think many of us really don't like to hear, right? We want God to remove Babylon. God often says, I'm going to grow you in Babylon. And the deeper truth here in Jeremiah 29:11 is not primarily about God changing your circumstances. It's about God being faithful in your circumstances. The promise isn't you'll avoid hardship, right? I think we all know that by now. The promise is your hardship isn't pointless. God's plans were still moving forward even while his people sat in exile. That connection to us, see, many people feel like they're in Babylon right now. The diagnosis didn't go away. The marriage isn't where they hoped it would be. The financial pressure still remains. The prayer hasn't been answered yet. Jeremiah 29:11 reminds us that God can be working even when nothing around us appears to be changing. The future and hope are real. They just arrived on God's timetable instead of theirs. Ask yourself this: am I spending all my energy trying to escape my Babylon, or am I being faithful inside it? Because sometimes the greatest act of faith isn't running toward a miracle. Sometimes it's planting a garden in Babylon because God told you to. That is much deeper and much more challenging. And it's more than just a verse that we put on coffee mugs or graduation gifts, right? So today, let's stay in it. Let's realize where we are. Pray for guidance and pray for discernment. And do God's work where you're at. Thanks, guys. Keep building.